All right, 7A. Some people had trouble with 1 through 6, so I'm going to go through those rather quickly. Number 1, it says distinguish between an outcome and an event. Outcome is one individual thing, like if I'm rolling dice, it would be getting a 1 and a 3. That's one event, one outcome. Excuse me. And an event is a combination of outcomes. It could be just one, like an event could be a sum of 2, which would be only one outcome, the 1 and 1 on the dice, or it could be the sum of 7, which has 6 outcomes that add up to 7. And so an event is several outcomes versus an outcome is just one particular thing that could happen. Okay, number 2. What does it mean when we write P of an event? It means how many ways are there to get what you want to have successful getting that event? How many ways are there to that event happens over how many possible outcomes are there? So how many outcomes are in the event over how many outcomes are there? And what is the possible range for the probability event? That's between 0 and 1. There's probabilities always somewhere between 0 and 1. And 3, briefly describe the difference between theoretical and relative frequency and subjective. Theoretical, you know all the possible outcomes and how likely each one is. Theoretical, you don't, so you do an experiment and see how frequent something happens. That's the experimental or theoretical, a relative frequency. And then subjective is just using your intuitive ability or your gut feeling for trying to determine the probability. You say, I think there's a 50-50 chance, or there's a 75% chance, or something. You're just kind of making it up, but you kind of have some sort of gut feeling, so it's a subjective determination. Number 4 is how probable is it? How is the probability of an event not occurring to the rate probability that it does occur? Not occurring is 1 minus the probability of it not occurring is the probability of it does happen, because either it does or it doesn't, and the total probability is 1, so 1 minus 1 is the other. So 1 minus the probability it does is the probability it does not, and vice versa. Number 5. What is a probability distribution? That's when you figure out all the probability of all the possibilities. For instance, if I flip a coin 3 times, then I could get heads either 0 times or 1 or 2 or 3 times, and I figure out each of these probabilities and that for that, and that would be the distribution of the probabilities of getting heads. And what is the common usage of the terms odds and its usage in gambling? Odds is how many outcomes, number of outcomes desired over number of outcomes not desired. And how that's different from probability is that probability says the number of outcomes desired over all the possible outcomes. This is outcomes desired over not desired. That's normal odds, but in gambling the odds are against, and it's the reciprocal of this. These are flipped for gambling odds. Okay, and that was 6. All right, 7. 7 says, decide whether each statement makes sense. When I toss 4 coins, there are 4 different outcomes that all represent the event of 1 head and 3 tails. Well, if I toss 4 coins, there 1 head and 3 tails, there are 4 separate outcomes. The head could come first, and then tail, tail, tail. Or I could do a tail and then a head and then a tail and a tail. Or I could get a tail and a tail and a head and a tail. Or I can get a tail, 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 head. And there are 4 different outcomes for the 4 coins. So that is true. It makes sense. Number 8. The probability that my sister will get into college of her choice is 3.7. Does not make sense. Probability cannot be more than 1. It's always between 0 and 1. Does not make sense. Alright, now I'm going to do another video for the next set.